to the Spring 2024 Honor School Research Conference. We are very excited for today. This is probably the biggest day and the day that we most look forward to on the Honor School calendar. You can pardon my sports analogies for the day. The presenters already had to endure one. Here's their next one. But today is almost like when Caitlin Clark is in town. This is a must-see event, and you really want to be here to experience. And if you don't know, Caitlin Clark is a college women's basketball player. Everybody's talking about women's basketball now because of what she's done. And the only thing you really need to know is that she's amazing. Everybody wants to see her play. She does some things that are super rare. That'll help for my analogy later as well. But today is a big day for us because this is the culmination of so much work and time and effort that our honor students put into this honor school thesis. You may have heard me say this before, but it does bear repeating because I learned the importance of this day before I even started working at Monmouth University. When I spoke with Dean Mezzi, our retired honor school dean, she wanted me to start officially at Monmouth before the fall research conference in 2022. I had other intentions. I wanted to take some time off in between jobs, a rarity that happens where I can just relax. But I listened to her, and like everybody in this room who has also taken Dean Mezzi's advice, I was very glad that I did. So my third day ever on this campus, I was sitting in the back of this room and I witnessed this research conference. I was incredibly impressed. And I've spent a career working in education, and when you do teach, they often tell you that you should begin with the end in mind, meaning before you create a lesson, before you do anything, you should think about what's the final product. What are they doing? Well, I lived that fully here with the honor school because I literally saw, before I knew anything else, the final product of what you guys do here. And it was impressive. But I had flipped to that last chapter, the last page of a book. I read it. I knew how it ended, but I had no idea the work it took to get to today. And I've spent the last 16 months reading that novel, understanding it a lot more, and I answer all the conferences ever since with a much more profound appreciation for what our students here do. And what you do as undergraduate students is nothing short of impressive, and I want to reiterate that to you with a brief example. I recently heard from one of our graduates, and she had taken her honor school thesis, had to shorten it because it's pretty lengthy, and submitted it to a graduate level conference and won an award. So her undergraduate thesis won a graduate level award, because what you're doing here is very rare for an undergraduate student to do. It's impressive, and today is exciting because it's the culmination of so much hard work that you have done, not just with the honor school, but really at Monmouth University. The projects that our students are presenting today are entirely their own, and they spent at least a year working on that. Many spend a little bit more time, but it is a rather lengthy journey. Most of our students start this journey in our thesis prep course, where they walk in with little to no idea of what they're going to do for this project. They just know they have to do an honors thesis, and they just don't know what their honors thesis will be. But they consider their coursework and the conversations and their personal passions. They consider ways that it might adapt or fit to their current curriculum. They look at ways they might combine a couple of their majors or personal passions and a major, or just a way to delve into their content in more depth. They leave that first class with a little seed, little idea or concept, and then they start to plant that seed and water it in our second course, which is the research class or our proposal course, where they set off to find 25 scholarly sources and write a literature review. And when you're doing that, to find 25 good ones, you've also probably found a few bad seeds along the way that you've had to dispose of and move on. They take all of this as their proof of concept and set off, and they can take that seed and make it something tangible. And today we get to see what they've grown from all of that work and see what that little seed that started this journey has become. The honor school thesis is very much a little bit like Caitlin Clark because it is all we talk about in the honor school. I've not been here very long, but in every conversation that I have, whether it be for just asking about classes, what they should do next semester, there's a conflict with something, we always get back to the honors thesis. It is a constant thing on everyone's mind. But when I talk about it, I often find it very difficult to explain because our students are able to take their research and do whatever they want with that research. For example, in this session today, we are going to learn about flipped classroom teaching and chemistry courses, bibliotherapy, AI in video games, professors' impact on students' mental health, and whether a protein powder is what it claims to be. Later today, I get to hear about the Yankees, garbage, and turtles. So you can see this is not easy to describe to somebody who says, what is my thesis supposed to be? It can literally be anything that you were excited about, even if that is garbage. Yes, you can come back later. And that is the fun part for our students. Getting here though, while this can be a very fun journey, it takes a lot of work, and for many of them, this task seems pretty daunting. There are many times, I'm sure, throughout they have questioned why they're doing this and whether or not it's worthwhile, but they're here today at the very end of that struggle, and I hope you all feel very accomplished, very proud of yourself, and you see a great value in this experience. Or maybe officially when the dust settles and you've officially hit submit on your final thesis, you might feel that, but you should feel a great sense of relief and pride today. Today is a very big deal in general because nationwide, the average for honors students to graduate from an honors program that they start with is 40%. So, like I've said before, this is some very rarefied air and very much like watching a feat of Caitlin Clark. You're all Caitlin Clarks in this room because you're doing something that is quite unique and a lot of people will back away from. But all of this today is not possible without a lot of help, and that first comes with the help of our professors. One of the very unique and very cool things our students get to do is work directly with a professor of their choosing on their honor school thesis. These professors mentor and shepherd our students through their research and completion of this class. They help them with their proposal, they help them with their project, they share their knowledge and expertise to get our students to today. So I cannot thank you enough for the work that you do with our students. A great deal of our gratitude at the Honor School goes to you because we can't do what we do here today without you. So I'd like to take a minute just to thank the professors and first readers from our students. An honor school is only as successful as the support it receives from around the university, and we're very fortunate that our administrative staff, deans, and faculty support the mission of the honor school. This is most prevalently seen in our honors council, which is made up of professors from across the university that assist the dean and the honor school. Their input this year has been exceptionally vital. Their dedication to honors education has allowed us to be as successful as we are. This is also a great time to remind our presenters today that next week you'll be receiving an email with the application for the Honors Council Award for Best Thesis, which we encourage you to apply. There's one person in particular, as always, to thank at the Honor School, and that is the person who keeps us moving and makes this event run as smoothly as it is, Doris Meyer, the assistant to the dean. She does a lot of the planning to get today going, so a great thank you. Doris is often not in the room when we thank her, so she is in the room today, so thank you, Doris. She's literally behind the scenes and making the day run smoothly, so she's here at least for this thank you. I'm excited for you guys to see what our students are going to share with you today, and we're going to get going in just a moment. If you have not yet scanned our QR code here, this is our program for the event. You can see the full day's agenda. We have a total of 30 students presenting today, which is very exciting, which means we have 30 students finishing their honors thesis. So if you scan that QR code, which was made by our resident graphic design artist and honor student, Gina Deej, has all of our information for abstracts, titles, readers, all that fun stuff. I also ask you to take a moment to silence your cell phones. And we are recording our event. It is in the back of the room, so just be mindful if you do need to leave. You can interrupt me, I don't care, but don't interrupt the students. This is their big day. We hope that you're excited to hear them. Each student, when they get up, will have an 8-minute presentation, and then followed by a 2-minute Q&A, and they get to officially be done with their honor school thesis. So I welcome our first presenter, Rachel Ludwig, majoring in chemistry with a concentration in biochemistry, and she'll be presenting her work that she has done with her first reader, Dr. Nikita Burrows.
Good morning. Today I'll be discussing student experiences in flipped general chemistry courses through the lens of the self-determination theory. I want to thank Dr. Burrows for all of her help with my project. The flipped classroom is a new educational model growing in popularity that has been implemented in schools across various levels and disciplines. The general design involves flipping the traditional in-class lecture and outside of class practice. In the flipped classroom, students engage with the lecture content before class and then practice and apply their knowledge during class through dynamic, collaborative activities guided by the instructor. Research shows positive student experiences with this active learning model. The theoretical framework being used for this study is self-determination theory. SDT describes how an individual's social environment shapes his or her motivation. Internal motivating factors, as well as a continuum of external motivating factors, shapes an individual's personal development in social situations. Since not all activities will be inherently interesting, autonomous extrinsic motivation provides a healthier form of external motivation, in which the lack of interest is replaced by a sense of value and purpose. SDT focuses on 3 basic psychological needs. First is autonomy, in which students can self-direct their learning. Second, competence, in which students feel capable and effective. And third is relatedness, where students experience close, supportive relationships. Research indicates that satisfying these 3 needs encourages self-determined motivation and positively impacts an individual's well-being. The research questions were: how do specific features of the flipped classroom contribute to students' experiences of autonomy, competence, and relatedness in the learning process? And how can one measure the success of the flipped classroom? 12 students who completed flipped General Chemistry 1 or 2 courses at Monmouth were interviewed for this study. Each participant selected a pseudonym to keep their identity anonymous. The interviews were audio recorded and transcribed with the written consent of the student, and the duration of the interviews was about 30 minutes to 1 hour. Then, an inductive coding process was used to assign meaning to the data and begin the process of pattern recognition. The coding process gave rise to themes that were used to construct a model, and finally, the theory was then integrated into this model. So an in-depth analysis of the interviews led to this visual map of the needs of SDT in the 3 phases of flipped learning: before, during, and after class. The core categories were placed into the appropriate phases, and color-coordinated star icons were used to show which needs of SDT were satisfied by each core category. We'll break this down. To begin, pre-recorded lecture videos were the main feature of the before class phase. And the first theme is personalized learning. Students experienced autonomy by controlling when and how to watch these videos, how to take notes, and how to supplement the videos based on their desired learning outcomes. For example, students could watch the lectures all at once, or they could break it up. For example, Penny said, "I couldn't watch the whole video through, so I would take it in little increments." This was just one way that students could customize their learning experience. The next theme was foundational understanding. The videos also supported competence by giving students a basic understanding of the new material and an opportunity to create questions, allowing them to engage more deeply with the lesson and setting them up to seek specific guidance when they got to class. For the next phase, class began with a student-centered mini-lecture, followed by dynamic, collaborative practice activities that were guided by the instructor. The first theme here is intentional review. Mini-lectures supported autonomy by utilizing student feedback to shape the lecture discussions, and competence, as students could work through specific areas of weakness by focusing on the material that was most challenging during class. The next theme was active learning with support. Group work supported autonomy by allowing students to work through their problems more independently instead of overly relying on the professor for help, and competence by testing their knowledge and receiving timely feedback, also relatedness as they worked with one another and with their professor. For example, Luciana said, "It was cool just to see where my partner was at, and if I could help her or if she could help me." And I feel like that helps you too. If you can teach somebody a concept, then you actually know it. We see here the need for relatedness is also connected to the need for competence. As one student taught another, they were able to build a connection and also both grow in their understanding of the material. The final theme here is a positive class environment. This particular class environment supported relatedness by creating an enjoyable, interactive, and non-judgmental learning space. Finally, after class, the major themes were centered on the extra help sessions available to students. The first theme was extra help opportunities. Students experienced autonomy by choosing to participate in different extra help sessions based on their personal preferences and schedules, and relatedness as they could connect with their professor in a more intimate, one-on-one or small group setting. The next theme was various ways to utilize extra help. Students experienced autonomy by choosing what to discuss in these sessions, as well as competence by improving their understanding of specific material that they needed help with. For example, Veronica shared how this benefited her. She said, "I felt like if you had trouble and you didn't really know how to study, if you would go on the call, which was for extra help, ask her for help, the next day you take the quiz, it kind of gave you more confidence in yourself, then you would understand it a little better." So we can see that these extra help sessions set students up for success. So in conclusion, to create an environment where students experience more autonomous forms of motivation, the following features of the flipped classroom are essential. First, self-directed pre-class learning through videos. Second, mini lectures based on student feedback. Third, ample practice time in class with appropriate support. 4, an engaging, non-judgmental class environment. And 5, a variety of resources and opportunities for more individualized extra help after class. Finally, this study has led to new ways to think about the success of the flipped classroom. Previous studies have largely focused on academic achievement. However, this raises the question, what is the goal of education? Is it simply to achieve high grades? While the flipped classroom can certainly benefit students academically, I believe that its deeper impact is found in the way that it teaches students how to take personal responsibility for their education, how to work collaboratively with others, and how to persevere through challenges, which are skills which will last them far beyond their time in school. Thus, the flipped classroom doesn't just educate students, it prepares young adults for productivity and self-accountability in their professional lives. Therefore, future research should focus on alternative ways to evaluate the success of the flipped classroom. These are my references. That's it. Yes. Any questions? Yes. There is not a limit to the class size. We focused on the general chemistry courses. There could be no more than 30 students in the class, and they split up into small groups, so even if it is a larger class, they can split up into smaller groups, but I would say, yeah, probably it wouldn't work in a very large class setting. Yeah, so I am a chemistry major, and I'm not education at all, but I really enjoy education and just learning about how people learn. I think it's very interesting and also allowed me to explore kind of something a little different than the traditional chemistry stuff that I'm doing already. So yeah, it was enjoyable. Thank you.
Wonderful job. I like when students integrate a couple different spaces, so both their actual coursework and then kind of how you understand your own coursework and a good way to learn it. Our next presenter is Juliet Torgman, who's majoring in biology with a concentration in molecular cell physiology, and she'll be presenting her work that she has done with Dr. Elizabeth Gilmartin-Keating.
Hello everyone and good morning. My name is Juliet Torgman, and today I will be talking about bibliotherapy and how it can be an alternative form of easily accessible and affordable therapy. First, we are going to go over a brief introduction on my two most important topics in this presentation, which is bibliotherapy and mental health. So what is bibliotherapy? Bibliotherapy is a form of therapy that utilizes different types of literature and related mediums, like journaling and creative writing, as a form of therapy. Bibliotherapy can help establish insight and coping skills for those who suffer from mental illnesses. A little background on bibliotherapy. The term was coined in the early 1900s and has since been a topic of discussion in therapeutic practices. However, it wasn't until the Second World War did we see the utilization of bibliotherapy by people other than trained therapists and clinical facilitators. Bibliotherapy has become more well known, and nurses, social workers, and educators have begun incorporating it into their fields of practice. As for mental health, I feel like it is safe to say that we've kind of seen a mental health crisis in the last couple of years. And as sad as it is important to note that over 70% of people globally who struggle with some form of mental illness doesn't receive the treatment they need, which is why bibliotherapy should be such a hot topic right now. This topic is increasingly relevant because clinical help isn't always accessible or affordable, and those who suffer from mental illness need this accessibility in order to get treatment. Around 60–80% of people with depression can be treated effectively with primary care, but less than 50% of those individuals actually seek out and receive that treatment. So why do I think bibliotherapy is a solution? Well, to put it nicely, it is extremely accessible, inexpensive, and effective. Bibliotherapy is widely accessible and available, making it a possibly invaluable method for early intervention for individuals who don't have access to these specialized mental health services. As for the cost of bibliotherapy, it is incomparable to traditional therapy, as in some cases, bibliotherapy can be free. And after reading countless articles and studies, it has been shown that bibliotherapy can be just as effective as traditional therapy in treating those with depression, anxiety, and various other mental health issues. So now that we understand why I think bibliotherapy can be a solution to this mental health crisis, let's talk a little bit about bibliotherapy itself and how it can be broken down. After reading 50 peer-reviewed scholarly journals, there was one thing among them all, and that was bibliotherapy is not one size fits all. When providing a program of bibliotherapy, there's a certain process that needs to be followed. You need to determine which type of bibliotherapy should be most effective for the specific individual. Which leads me to the two different types of bibliotherapy, cognitive and affective. Cognitive refers to the development of cognitive behavioral change by utilizing literature and reading materials that directly refers to one's anxieties, fears, behavioral issues, and so on. Affective refers to the development of a sense of awareness and self-exploration, as well as unearthing and uncovering repressed thoughts they might have. Now, with those two types of bibliotherapy, there are three separate categories: clinical, developmental, and client-developed. Clinical focuses more on emotional and behavioral issues and is typically implemented by psychotherapists and counseling professionals. Developmental focuses on self-help and emphasizing personal well-being and is typically implemented by self-help books and motivational books. This is generally administered by teachers, parents, school counselors, and social workers. Client-developed focuses more on solitude and is self-implemented by the individual. This is typically done through journaling and creative writing. Next, how do we see bibliotherapy implemented on the personal level? How does it affect the individual? This leads me to the 4 stages of bibliotherapy. Once the proper source of literature is chosen and the individual is deemed ready, the journey begins. First, we have identification, which is when the individual begins to identify with the characters in the book, and this is usually because they see a resemblance between them and the characters. Second would be catharsis, which is when the individual becomes emotionally involved in the story and they eventually have an emotional release. Next would be insight, which is when they realize a change is possible and ultimately a solution is possible. And lastly, we see universalism, which is when the individual understands that they are not alone and that there are others who can share their experiences and pain. After learning how bibliotherapy is implemented, where have we seen, or where have I seen, bibliotherapy being successfully implemented in different environments? Out of the many studies, Bibliotherapy has been successfully tested in many environments like schools, old age homes, women's centers, prisons, libraries, drug recovery centers, and most significantly to me, at home. So how effective has bibliotherapy been in the past? Out of different studies I read, I chose 3 that highlighted the most important benefits of bibliotherapy. For the first study, we saw an overall decrease in suicidal ideologies when suicidal individuals received narrative-based bibliotherapy about working through suicidal thoughts. They also reported that they had a perceived shared experience and an increase in optimism. In the second study, we see a decrease in college stress and anxiety, which couldn't be more relevant. When using mindfulness-based stress reduction bibliotherapy and self-help, they saw an overall decrease in depression, anxiety, stress, perceived stress, and anxiety sensitivity, as well as an increase in physical health, psychological, and environmental domains, as well as mindfulness. For the third study, we see a decrease in depression when it comes to studying adolescents using self-determination-focused acceptance bibliotherapy. They also saw an increase in self-awareness, decision-making skills, self-regulation, and goal-setting abilities. So after all of this research, what did I determine about bibliotherapy? Well, for one, it is effective. 2, it is more accessible than traditional therapy. 3rd, it is significantly less expensive than other therapy options. And 4th, it is highly personable. Knowing all of the benefits that I do now, where can I see bibliotherapy being applied? Campus libraries for one, juvenile detention centers, rehabilitation centers, and retirement homes. But I hope to eventually see bibliotherapy being widely accepted and utilized in many more settings and environments so we can help to fight the battle of the mental health crisis across the globe. Thank you very much for listening. Do anyone have any questions? Right, so it could be found in like a lot of different environments. My whole point of this is because I want to see it in more environments, but for libraries, for example, librarians would go through a course of like, they would learn basically the principles of bibliotherapy, and they would be more able to help the students in like a personalized manner. Another place would be like prisons, where they've done research studies where they've actually implemented bibliotherapy. So you could kind of see it across many different environments. It just depends if they implement it and add it to their sources and resources. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Did you choose the topic? You're a biology major.
Right. So I'm a biology major, that is true. I also have a minor in English literature. But really, my love for this topic came from my love for reading, and also the fact that, you know, mental health is such a like taboo topic. And to be a little transparent, I was putting off therapy for a while, and I would kind of find my comfort in books. And I wondered why that was. So, you know, I initially did this research in Dr. Gilmartin's class, and I wanted to expand on it. And yeah. Any other questions? Or thank you.
It's extra fun when students choose topics that I enjoy. I love books. I was an English major, so very fun presentation. Our next presenter, Andrew Catapano, who's majoring in computer science, who's presenting his work with Dr. Joe Chung.
So good morning, everybody. First off, I would like to thank Dr. Chung for doing this with me, being my first reader. So my topic is NPCs in video games, how artificial intelligence shapes gameplay experiences. So introduction, who am I? So I'm Andrew Catapano. I'm a computer science major, and I have a passion for video games. I play them a lot. What is AI? So AI is basically the use of machines to simulate human intelligence. So like decision-making, perception of the environment, and all that. So my research basically consisted of me looking up how AI is used in games. So it can be used to generate assets, generate levels, as well as the main focus of my project is NPC behavior or non-playable characters. So those are like the enemies or other characters in the game that the player interacts with. So I also researched the tools that are available, like the free game engines, like how each one handles it, as well as how to make it. So what better way to investigate this topic than to create a game using what I researched? So my inspiration for my game, I was thinking, what game heavily relies on AI to make the experience enjoyable and challenging? So the first thought was Hitman. So Hitman's basically a game where you take control of, well, a hitman, and you get a target to take out, and you have to take out that target as stealthily as possible. So creating my game. So I decided to use Unreal Engine 5, which is basically a 3D game engine that's free. It also has an advanced AI toolkit to create NPC behavior as well as other things. So my game design process, first I shaped the player mechanics like the weapon system, movement system. Then I moved into the AI, how the enemies would react to the player, and environmental stimuli. Then I did level design, and then I obviously fixed whatever bugs I came across. So first we're going to go into a couple of the main AI components that I used in making the AI before we do the demo. So the first would be Environment Query System, or EQS. So that's basically a system that generates a grid of points around a certain character. So it could be around the enemy, around the player, and it uses a series of tests that you set up to determine what point the enemy should move to based on different stimuli. So in this example, it's basically an EQS query to find reachable points by the enemy. So since those blue points are up on a ledge, the enemy doesn't really know how to jump, so it can't reach those, so it will only be able to go to the green points. So the next one is Behavior Tree in Blackboard. This basically makes up the brains of the AI. So the behavior tree is a flow chart for decision making. It determines what action the enemy will take based on the information it has stored in its Blackboard, which stores the information to influence the decisions. So in this little example, the behavior tree would be a sequence that would find the closest enemy, it would store it in the Blackboard, then it would use that information to attack that enemy. So the last one is obviously the AI controller. It connects the AI logic to the enemy character. So in Unreal, you make the character, you make the movement logic, and then you are able to possess that character with an AI controller to make it do the actions you want. So this also controls the AI perception, like the senses. So in my game, the enemy could sense touch, sound, sight, damage, and has some prediction elements as well. And it also updates the Blackboard values for use in the behavior tree. So this is my final behavior tree. It's a little blurry because it was kind of hard to fit on one slide. But basically, the AI has 5 states. It has an attacking state, a seeking state, an investigating state, a helping state, and a passive state. So attacking, obviously, if it sees the player, it'll go attack. And then if it gets low health, it'll find cover, regenerate, and go back to attacking. And then in seeking, so if it loses sight of the player, it'll send out an EQS query, go to a point where it doesn't see, and try and find the player there. And then investigating, the player can make sounds in the game, like gunshots, as well as throwing objects to distract an enemy. So we'll go investigate those sounds. Then helping state, the player is equipped with a tranquilizer, so it could knock out enemies, and if another enemy sees a knocked out enemy, it will go and wake that enemy up and help him out. It also has a passive state where it patrols a set of patrol points that is set up for each enemy. So this is a little demo. Does it work on here? All right. Might be better to pull it up on YouTube. Oh, no, it works. All right, so this is like a quick demo, so I'm not really showcasing everything, because this is just like the full game, but, oh shoot, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's better to pull it up in here so I can pause it and talk about it, sorry. Come on. All right, this is fine. Okay, so I spawn in. I threw this like little object here. So I throw the object. It distracts the enemies at the front of the door. Then I run over to the side, and I'm gonna trank this enemy on the side. And when the enemy that's patrolling the whole area comes around, they'll wake them up, so I can't go out through this exit. So I go in, I avoid being seen by the patrolling enemies inside, and I go take out this first target. The targets are in yellow. Then I trank this enemy, and then I go take out the rest of the targets without getting detected. So this doesn't really showcase me getting attacked by the enemy, but if I was to get detected, if that detection meter, if you noticed, would fill up, they would find a point around me, shoot, find another point around me, shoot. And it's kind of tough if you don't really know how it works, because like the first time I tried it, I died pretty much immediately. But since I made the game, I was able to figure it out and do a successful run. But yeah, I take out this last enemy, and then I escape through the front gate. All right. And that is all. Thank you very much, everybody.
Compared to the games to reading a book, what would you rather do?
Definitely the games. I don't know. Not really a book person.
Waste of time to me. I mean, kids spend a lot of time doing this. I mean, how constructive is it?
Well, with the AI research in games, so AI can be applied a multitude of ways in games. So in the broader context, if you make an AI algorithm like a behavior tree in a game, and you have like a robot that you want to program, you could use this game as an example of like how the robot should act, and that logic and algorithm can be applied to maybe a robot or a different AI.
I know nothing about computers or games. I don't play, but it was very cool. I was wondering if you'd consider working on it further, and maybe you guys are actually making a video game.
Maybe. Obviously, this is pretty rough right now, but if I was to pursue something, maybe I would go with a different concept, because this is mostly just me trying to mimic as close as possible, like Hitman, but maybe make it more unique, and then maybe I can make it into an actual game.
How long did it take you to make?
Well, obviously, we had the whole semester, so it took me the whole semester, but the longest part was definitely getting the player mechanics working, like everything with the weapon system and the movement and all that.
Are your parameters set by your coding, or is this AI actually a self-learning too, where it can become more robust and learn more actions that you haven't predestined into the game itself?
Obviously, you can apply something like machine learning, but my main focus was to make a game using set parameters, just like having the AI react to certain environment and stimulus.
The gentleman's point behind me, why would you want to do this instead of read a book? My son is also a computer science, and I learned that this generation of fighter pilots will possibly be our last fighter pilots, because they're all going to be autonomous going forward. So the future is not people in planes, it is autonomous function controlling.
Yeah, so that's definitely all AI stuff. There's many applications outside of games, inside of games, and it's all being researched, and it's advancing at a rapid pace. Yeah.
What are you going to do when you graduate?
What I'm gonna do is, hopefully I'm gonna find like something to do this summer, but I'm coming back here from the master's program. So then after that, hopefully find a job doing something.
Don't play games.
Any other questions? We're good.
I saw an early draft, and Andrew, you didn't mention it, but you built the whole building, right? Like you had to make the building and make the whole like sort of environment, because that first image, he's just running on little dots, and then eventually it's a whole thing. I got to watch all the draft submissions of videos of how this was progressing, so it's cool to see the final product. Our next presenter is Alexia Cole. who is majoring in chemistry with a concentration in advanced chemistry and presenting the work that she has done under first reader, Dr. Nikita Burrows.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all today. I'm going to be talking about the effects of professors' actions on students' depressive symptoms, and I'd like to give a big thank out to Dr. Burrows for her help throughout this whole process. So depression is on the rise in undergraduates. With high course loads, intensive classes, and the pressure to succeed, depressive symptoms can be exacerbated. They are also associated with lower psychological functioning. Issues with concentration, motivation, and self-confidence are all very prevalent in people with depression. Depression itself is also a concealable stigmatized identity, which in and of itself can create psychological distress. Depression can manifest in many ways in academics, one of those being academic performance. GPA and depression are significantly negatively correlated. One of the theorized reasons for this occurrence is the disruptions in concentration that people with depression experience. These disruptions in concentration may be caused by the inclination to focus on negative thoughts and emotions rather than the cognitive task at hand. So for educational activities like homework and lectures, concentration may be difficult. So depressive symptoms may predict academic performance. Motivation is also the key to academic success. Numerous studies have shown that internal motivational factors are much more well-equipped for academic success than external motivational factors. The predictor of this is interest. Obviously, this seems like common sense, though there is a lot of research behind it that backs it up. Finally, academic self-concept, the ability of one's perceived ability based on their past experience, and this can shape how students are motivated for the future. So this predicts motivation, and the predictor for this is GPA. So if a student has a higher GPA in the class before, they're more likely to be confident in their abilities in a similar class in the future. Personal relationships are key in undergraduate settings, and especially in research. Positive relationships and good mentorship can lead to psychological support and collaboration between peers. However, on the other hand, poor mentorship can lead to a comparison between peers and feelings of incompetence. Additionally, knowing students' names is really important in an undergraduate setting. It makes students feel valued and it builds student-instructor relationships. Now, this research up here was done in a larger scale university, so it will be interesting to see how this affects a smaller scale university. Humor is a great way to bond with students and break up class time. Laughing itself relieves cortisol and dopamine levels, which in and of itself reduces stress. So in an environment like a classroom, that's great. Funny humor has been shown to reduce depressive symptoms, while unfunny humor has no effect. Offensive humor does tend to increase the depressive symptoms and creates a more hostile environment. So what the disposition theory of humor states that if one's identity is a target of a joke, they're more likely to be offended by the joke. So what this means is that if you're an educator, avoid using jokes about identity as they may be perceived as harmful. For my study, I required all participants to be chemistry or biology majors. They had to have depressive symptoms and be at least 18 years old. I decided to reject freshmen because I wanted participants who had a more well-rounded experience in an undergraduate setting. I also decided to reject people based on PHQ score. So the PHQ is a patient health questionnaire that analyzes depressive symptoms, and it ranges from a variety of scores. I decided to reject people whose depressive symptoms did not impact their day-to-day life. So that was the cutoff for me. My semi-structured interviews had three main topics: personal relationships and science research relationships. What effect does this have on depressive symptoms? What about them is so impactful? Motivation and focus. How can professors affect this? Humor, knowing names, and feedback. Once again, what effect does this have on depressive symptoms and what is causing these effects? So prior to the interview, participants filled out a consent form, demographics form, and the PHQ-9. The interviews were audio recorded and averaged about 20 minutes. The interviews were later then transcribed and all identifying features were removed. And then the interviews were analyzed, cross-referenced, and coded. I ended up with a total of 6 participants after my exclusions. 2 of them had moderate to severe depressive symptoms, 2 mild to moderate, and 2 little to none. However, these 2 did impact their day-to-day life, so I decided to include them. Personal relationships showed an overall decrease of depressive symptoms, but what about these relationships produce these effects? Professors that provide an outlet for discussion, relationships, advice is a great way to build connections with students. Professors who are also accepting and understanding were more likely to form better relationships with their students. Additionally, continuous and reliable support is important in personal relationships with students, especially students with depression who may need more support than others. Similar results were found in the relationships with the research instructors. 2 things I'd like to point out were that research instructors who value students' opinion and insight had students who enjoyed research more. Being able to collaborate and address both student and professor needs is key in maintaining a good professor-student relationship. Additionally, professors and research instructors who were open and honest with their students provided a less stressful environment and decreased depressive symptoms overall. Motivation, so that could be increased by proper feedback from professors being more personable and having a little bit of leniency. Now this showed to increase confidence and alleviate pressures in students. When motivation was decreased, it created students with procrastination, they lacked enjoyment in the class, and it increased stress. Concentration was increased by being an interactive classroom, having hands-on activities, appealing to all learning types, collaboration with peers, and also, again, being personable. And this, again, showed an increase in confidence and a decrease overall in depressive symptoms. However, when concentration was decreased, students said they were tired. It increased their workload because now they have to relearn this information at home. And also, they were upset with themselves that they couldn't focus. With students with depression, the issues with concentration and motivation are caused inside them and they cannot fix that. So these are things that we can do that can kind of help that. Most students enjoyed the use of humor in the classroom. They felt it humanized the professor, it lightened the mood, and it helped to alleviate depressive symptoms overall. Surprisingly, unfunny humor still had a positive effect. Students appreciated that they were trying. Knowing students' names also had a very impactful effect, especially in a smaller institution. It made students feel valued and validated, as well as increased their confidence. It also built a connection with the professor and created a more personable relationship with the professor. Positive feedback increased confidence, motivation, and was validating. However, one student noted that compliments do not equal positive feedback, so this could be something that's looked into in the future. Negative feedback had students questioning their abilities, affected motivation, and made some students not want to go to class in fear of judgment or lack of motivation. However, these negative effects can be mitigated by having an open discussion and believing in students with a mutual understanding that both the professor and the student want the student to succeed. Wrapping up, some limitations were the small sample size and a limited population. However, since all 6 of my participants were Latina and female, this research could be used to focus on that population in STEM. So maybe in the future, this could be applied to a wider variety of people, but still focusing on that demographic. And also looking into cause and effect relationships between motivation, concentration, and academic performance. These are my references. Thank you all so much. Any questions? Yeah.
You noted that you cut off certain students because their day-to-day life were not impacted by depressive symptoms?
Yes.
Why was that? How did you make that decision?
So on the PHQ, I believe there are 9 questions, and then so those questions are all totaled up, and based on that value, they're assigned mild, moderate, little to none. And then they answer a final question, and that question is, how do these symptoms impact your day-to-day life? And there's 4 answers. It doesn't affect, somewhat, affects a lot, or the whole thing, it affects everything. So students who said it didn't affect their life, those were the ones I decided to exclude.
Think professors should be critiqued by someone in their department periodically to see that they're performing well?
I think that that's a great idea. I think also student evaluations as well, even mid-year, can be very helpful because, again, we're looking from the student's perspective. So we want to make sure that we're targeting what they need and what's going to benefit them. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that all the interviews, all the questions were directed only at chemistry, biology, and physics classes. So I was not mentioning any like gen eds and stuff like that.
Right. Were there discussions about course evaluations in this context? Did you also talk about the course evaluations that they typically take?
I did not discuss course evaluations. That would have been something that I could do in the future. If I was to do this again, I would make a lot of changes. But I did just want to focus on the feelings that the students felt and why they felt that, and how the professors can kind of make the students feel better instead of feel worse, essentially. So that's what I was looking into.
What do you think was like the most valuable thing you learned from the whole process, like doing this and talking to them?
I think the most valuable thing I learned actually was research skills. Doing the interviews, because this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, so this was very helpful with that. But from what I've learned from my data analysis, a lot of students want to be understood and have a relationship with their professors. And when students and professors are kind of on the same level and having a mutual understanding, that improves students' attitude towards the course a lot, at least in the interviews that I've done. Thank you.
I've had two presentations this morning about mental health, and there are more today. It's such an important topic and wonderful that our students are choosing to look at this in more detail. Our final presenter this session is Lindsay Buren, majoring in medical laboratory science and chemistry, presenting the research that she has done with her first reader, Dr. Davis Jose.
Hello everyone, my name is Lindsay Buren, and the title of my honors thesis is The Measurement and Determination of the Protein Composition of Beyond Raw Hydrolyzed Whey Protein Powder. I would like to thank my first reader, Dr. Jose. So, my thesis study tests the veracity of Beyond Raw's claim that their protein powder is a vegetarian protein alternative that provides athletes the freedom to remain vegetarian while being able to consume protein. I tested the authenticity of Beyond Raw's claim that their protein powder indeed contains the 7 major proteins that compose whey protein. The cheese-making process separates whey protein into a liquid that is an excellent source of high-quality protein. Whey protein extract is a great source of protein for resistance-trained athletes due to its good supply of essential amino acids. A series of experiments were used in this study to identify and measure the protein composition of Beyond Raw protein powder. The experiments performed included the ion exchange chromatography, or IEC, separation, Bradford assay of IEC fractions, SDS Page gel, and Western blot of the IEC fractions. The experiments were carried out to separate the whey proteins first by charge and then by molecular weight. IEC separated the proteins based on their charges, whereas the individual components were identified by SDS Page and Western blot. This contributed to the determination of the number and quantity of proteins present in the Beyond Raw protein powder. Whey protein is composed of 7 main proteins, including beta-lactoglobulin, alpha-lactalbumin, bovine serum albumin, lactoperoxidase, immunoglobulins, glycomacropeptide, and lactoferrin. The first 3 proteins are the proteins of whey protein that have the largest molecular weight, and lactoferrin has one of the lower molecular weights. In this table, I have included the absorbance values of the Beyond Raw ion exchange chromatography fractions. Bradford assay was performed on IEC fractions prepared with different salt concentrations to measure the relative absorbance values, which then determined which fractions were best suited to run on an SDS Page gel. A spectrophotometer was used to record the absorbance values for the eluted protein fractions. These absorbance values helped to determine which fractions were best suited for the SDS Page. The ion exchange chromatography experiment was performed on a Nuvia Q column. The separation of the proteins was done using 2 milligrams of Beyond Raw whey protein solution based on their charge in a Nuvia Q anion exchange resin, which contains amines which have a positive charge. The buffer was increased to a higher ionic strength, so the bound molecules eluted in order of their charge. This table contains a visual representation, or the elution profile, of the previous absorbance values of the Beyond Raw IEC fractions. The SDS page of the Beyond Raw ion exchange chromatography fractions were prepared at different salt concentrations and visualized on this SDS page gel. SDS page gel electrophoresis was completed based on the size of the whey proteins. The SDS detergent masked the charges of proteins so they were all the same charge and linearized them so they were all the same shape. The SDS page gel separated the major proteins solely based on their size because SDS denatured polypeptides have uniform negative charges and are all the same shape. Lanes 4 through 9 contain the buffer with various salt concentrations ranging from 0.2 to 0.5 molar sodium chloride. This table displays the major protein bands and molecular weights measured in kilodaltons of the SDS page Beyond Raw fractions that were prepared at different salt concentrations. The fourth column includes the identity of the protein based upon the approximate protein size. After the SDS page was performed, the proteins were transferred to a membrane for Western blot analysis using an antibody for the detection of a specific protein. A Western blot was performed containing the Beyond Raw whey ion exchange chromatography fractions with different salt concentrations from the previous Nuvia Q column. The Western blot focused on whether lactoferrin was found in Beyond Raw by using lactoferrin antibodies. Secondary antibodies were used to identify the primary antibody. So the overall results of my experiment. The overall findings did not confirm Beyond Raw's nutritional claim. In the Bradford assay, fractions with higher salt concentrations had decreasing absorbance values. In the SDS page gel, certain proteins did not elute from the column in their predicted order. Lactoperoxidase and lactoferrin did not elute in the void volume, which is the first fraction to elute, because these proteins were not represented by any visual band with a molecular weight of 78 kilodaltons. Lactoperoxidase and lactoferrin were 2 of the lower molecular weight proteins that compose whey protein as a whole. The most abundant whey proteins present in Beyond Raw were alpha-lactalbumin, beta-lactalglobulin, and bovine serum albumin. With regard to the Western blot, it cannot be concluded that lactoferrin was detected because it is not in a visible protein band with correct corresponding size. Although lactoferrin was not detected, it can still be concluded that whey protein is a beneficial addition to one's diet. In future studies, the Beyond Raw whey protein powder solution could be continued with an ion exchange chromatography separation in a Nuvia S column instead of a Nuvia Q column. Western blot using an antibody to detect a subprotein of whey protein other than lactoferrin may yield better results due to lactoferrin having a lower molecular weight, therefore it was harder to detect on the Western blot. I am interested in further researching the whey protein composition of other brands of whey protein and cross-examining the results. I am also possibly interested in looking at different types of protein powders, including pea protein and casein protein, and cross-analyzing multiple brands of each type of protein. I would like to thank Dr. Joes, my thesis first reader, for providing me with unwavering guidance and support. I would also like to thank Dean Ross and the Honors School for the opportunity for me to be able to complete my honors thesis. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
So you mentioned if I use the Q column, what differences in the result would you expect with the S column?
Using a Nuvia Q column, Nuvia Q is an anion exchange resin, and Nuvia S would be a cationic, I believe, exchange resin, not exchange resin. So I believe that it could show some possible parallel results that would be interesting to see if I did detection of lactoferrin throughout the whole process to see if the results would be as strong with a lower molecular weight protein. Yes?
Does the absence of lactoferrin actually affect the quality of the protein powder?
I don't believe that it does because it is one of the lower molecular weight proteins. The three major proteins of whey were the three larger ones, ALA, BLG, and ALA. And so I believe it doesn't have a significant impact on it. All of these proteins can be broken down, individualized, and that's what I did in this study. But overall, through all of my literature review research, it's been proven that whey protein as a whole is beneficial for athletes, non-athletes, and just people to incorporate into their daily diet. Thank you. Oh.
A wonderful job. One more congratulations.